What's up, y'all? Dr. Maisha here, coming to you with the communication pro tips and the conscious, unconscious mind integration education. Um, man, every time I come on alive, it's just so interesting because so many more things have happened in such a short span of time. And by for the most part, I like to sort of plan my content and to bring these topics to you that I bring, and then I also like it to be relatable to what's going on today. So. What I'm talking about today, what I plan to talk about today is the fact that in communication, we need to remember that we are all doing the best we can with the resources that we have in communication. However, we can adapt, and we're going to talk about behavioral change and adaptation for our empowerment today. So, first of all, I'm an 80s kid. I grew up in the 80s. I'm an 80s and 90s. I'm an next generation kid. Back in the day when there was a particular way that our parents dealt with us. And for those of you who, I don't know if you guys are have seen those videos. If you're those of you who are on TikTok, I recently joined TikTok just for the entertainment. And there's this video out that says, put 10 fingers up and then put one finger down if your mother's ever said this to you. And I, it was things like if your mother ever said to you, because I said so, or, like when we go to the store, don't ask for nothing, don't touch nothing because you ain't getting nothing, or, don't make me have to take you back out to the car, right? And then the classic is, back in the day when I was your age, I had to walk barefoot uphill both ways, no shoes, in the snow, backwards. And that was a kind of communication that, our parents had with us. And we laugh about it now because especially, Black and brown people, because it's a common experience that we shared. And you could probably ask your parents what their parents used to say, and there would be that experience. There would be probably some similarities and probably some differences, right? But, one of the things you might have noticed is how parenting has changed since then, how parenting is very different since then. Now, not good, not wrong, not bad, just different, because we have a set of resources that is different than our parents had. And they were doing the best they can with the resources they had. And the parents before them were doing the best they could with the resources they had. Now, I want to bring this with a conversation that I was having earlier, because, and earlier meaning over this weekend. So I was talking with good afternoon, Ray. I was talking with a friend of mine, a white friend of mine, who we were just talking about the events that are going on, and she was, sharing with me how she's taking this course in anti-racism, and like I say, I was just saying to her, at this point, white people's eyes are bleeding because, some people who she said, I'm totally blind to this whole time. And I can't imagine what you've been going through. And in this conversation, what came up for me was, well, you're doing the best you can with the resources that you have, right? And I say this because, for the most part in communication, in life, we are doing the best we can with the resources that we have. And when I say resources, what do I mean by that? We are all, like I alluded to with the parenting, we are all taught a different way growing up. We are all taught either verbally or non-verbally through specific language or through nonverbal language, through modeling, right? This is the passive teaching that we get. And if we're not taught differently, intentionally, then we get stuck with whatever we inherited. and specifically in the realm of communication. There are some, be seen and not heard types of communication that some of us have grown up with, or there are some do what I say and not as I do type communications that we grew up with. But if we're not taught differently, and if things are not modeled differently, then we get stuck with whatever we inherited. So, if you think about it from a global perspective, that's how we end up in a society where we end up now, because we have people in our society running our country who have been elected, who have a specific set of mental processes that they are limited to by their upbringing. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not justifying or validating any of that. I'm just to say that, there's a reason why we're here where we are. And as I always talk about, this happens at the unconscious level. I see you replay, Ray. This all happens at the unconscious level. I talk about it all the time. The shift that we're going to make in this country and in this world is going to have to happen at the unconscious level, person to person, individually. Now, fortunately, while we are all doing the best we can with the resources that we have, most of us, for the most part, right? Fortunately, the unconscious mind and our behavior is set up for adaptation. It's set up for change. Now, we are very adaptable. We have been adapting for hundreds of years, right? And we've been adapting in the physical realm. And then, of course, there is an unconscious adaptation or an unconscious shift that we have an opportunity to make. So what does it mean by we can adapt? It means that we can be flexible in our mental processes. We can change our behavior if we choose to, right? And the key here is if we choose to. You can choose to change your behavior. And that is what we're beginning to see now, is people choosing to learn, choosing to change their behavior. However, it does take time, right? So now you can see how we can apply this on a large scale, but how does this apply really in your life, one-to-one? How does this apply on the court in your life? As we're going through these days, these months, these however many long it's going to take to make this transformation, you want to get that when you're talking to someone, that they have a specific set of mental processes. They have a specific model that they inherited, right? And then they can do and communicate only as freely as they inherited the skill of communication that they inherited, right? So they are limited by the resources that they had coming up, the set of mental processes, internal thought processes, negative emotions, whatever it is, they're limited by that, right? And if they choose to change, they can. And we have to remember that as we're talking to people, because otherwise we will spend and waste our energy trying to change other people's minds in our lives and in communication. And it doesn't, us trying to force change upon other people's minds does not work. But when we understand that people operate from their specific models, people are limited by their mental models, as are we, right? So we do the best that we can with the resources that we have. And that's why I do this work, to expand those people who want to expand their capacity for communication, their capacity for power inside of expression, freedom inside of expression, and those people who want to be able to operate outside what they inherited. That's why I do the work that I do. But we have to also remember that when we're talking to other people, they're operating inside a particular mental model. This is in our lives, in our specific lives. And we can be responsible for that. If we're talking to someone and they're responding in a particular way, they're responding from their mental model. And they're responding because their interaction is the best that they can do with the resources that they have, right? Now, the solution is how do we shift that? That is the grand question, isn't it? How do we begin to shift that? Part of it is each individual person being responsible for, and this is the thing that we have to be responsible for. Each individual person, you being responsible for what are the resources that that you were inherited, and in order to give you more power, in order to give you more freedom, in order to give you more, a sense of expanded expression, in order for you to not feel constrained? What is it that you need to do to expand that so that you can navigate through your communications, through your day with a particular level of power, right? So that your homework over the next few days is just to observe the conversations out there. See, what happens is, people are having, we're having a conversation with people. You're having a conversation with your mother, with your father, with your brother, with your spouse, with your children, with Karen, right? You're having a conversation with them. And when we are not realizing that they're communicating from a specific model, we get hooked. And then when we get hooked, it takes us outside of our logical faculties, and we get hooked in, and we react rather than respond powerfully, right? So now, if you can begin to observe the conversations that you're having, and observe what's going on over there with those people who are responding and reacting to you in the way that they are, then you can retain your energy and your power by not being hooked. And you can then think about how you can navigate around their conversation such that your power is preserved. And when our power is preserved, then we can focus on what we need to do over in our lives to continue to build and expand our families and create legacy for our families, and do what we need to do to take care of us. Does that make sense? Now I want you to type in the chat box if any of this makes sense, right? So I want you to observe, excuse me, I want you to observe your conversations and responses and reactions over the next few days. And I love to hear your thoughts about what I'm saying. I love to hear your thoughts about where you can see what I'm saying, what makes sense, and where you struggle with the concept. But post in the comments if it makes sense. Now, if you want to go deeper, and also post in the comments if you're watching this on replay, because I know the time that I do this sometimes is right in the middle of the day. Some people are at work, but I want you to post in the comments if you're watching the replay. So post replay if you're watching the replay, post live if you're watching this live. And if you want to go deeper and you want to learn more about the inner workings of the unconscious mind and unconscious and conscious communication, how unconscious and conscious integration relates to being more powerful in your communication, and what's underneath it all, then you might want to consider registering for a free course that I have called Remap Your Mind for Success. And you can register for it. Like I said, it's free just by going to drmaisha.com, registering right from the home page, drmaisha.com, right from the home page. All right. And also, for some of you who are listening, you might not know this, but I recently started a new community, Facebook community called Mastering Conscious and Unconscious Conversations with NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. So if you are all interested in expanding your conversations and expanding your capacity for communication and interaction, both verbal, nonverbal, conscious and unconscious, then come join the conversation and get in dialogue with us about it. So that you can really start to get what it really takes to master your communication and be powerful and confident in every area of your life, right? And of course, finally, if you feel like you need some one-on-one help in sort of remapping your mind and getting rid of negative emotions and the limiting beliefs and all of that, so you can be free to communicate in the way that you feel most serves you, then you can always book a mind remapping reset call with me. And you can do that by going to drmaisha.com/meet me. It's right there. All right. So pass this video on if you feel like it was valuable, and invite people into the community. We want to grow this community because I'm very committed to holding the space for people to, and holding the space and empowering people to really get at the source of their communication, at the source of their lives, so that we can really, at the unconscious level, begin to shift all of these narratives that are being thrown upon us. And so that's what I have to say today. For sure, like I said, I want you to post in the comments your questions, your comments, what makes sense, what you struggle with. and observe over the next couple of days your conversations and your reactions and tell me what happened. All right. Tell me where you can see the limitations of people's mental models. Tell me where you can see where people are doing the best they can with the resources that they have. And tell me where you can see that you're doing the best that you can with the resources that you have. All right. And then when we get back, we link up again later this week, we're going to expand and deepen on this topic, on this principle a little bit more. So I look forward to seeing you all then. Until then, you guys have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. Namaste.